My name is Vicky Romeo. I'm 35 years old, and everything I have in my life I built with my own hands. Not inherited, not gifted, not shared. Built. Most mornings start before sunrise. By 5:30 a.m., I'm unlocking the metal side door of my diesel and commercial truck repair shop, flipping on the harsh industrial lights, and listening to the quiet hum of a space that used to terrify me when it was nothing more than an empty warehouse and a dream I couldn't afford. Now it's 4 service bays, 3 full-time mechanics, and a reputation I've bled for. I wasn't supposed to make it this far, not according to the people who raised me. My parents used to say things like, "Don't reach too high, Vicky," or "Just find something stable and stay out of trouble." But my dad, for all his flaws, taught me one thing worth keeping. Protect what you build. I watched him lose everything in a divorce when I was 12. House, savings, even his truck, all gone in one bitter breath. He rebuilt his life from scratch, but I learned early how fragile a life can be if you're not careful. So when I finally scraped together enough money to buy a foreclosure house in my 20s, I paid it off early. When I saved enough to buy the building for my shop, I put it in my name only. When the housing crash happened, I bought 2 rental properties, also in my name only. In my world, control isn't dominance, it's survival. I met Evan 7 years ago at a barbecue one of my friends hosted. He was charming, the kind of charming that feels effortless, until later you realize it's rehearsed. He had this warm smile, a gentle laugh, and a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. He asked about my business, about my life, about how it felt being a woman in a male-dominated industry. "It must take guts," he'd said, eyes soft. At the time, it felt like admiration. Later, I'd understand it was envy. We dated for a year before he proposed. His proposal wasn't elaborate. Just a quiet night on a lookout point with the valley lights scattered beneath us like a broken galaxy. He told me he wanted to build a life with me. Looking back, I realized he wanted to move into the life I'd been building long before he showed up. The first crack appeared the moment I brought up the prenup. Evan didn't just dislike the idea, he exploded. Tears, accusations, guilt-tripping. His mother even called me, saying things like, "Real wives don't need contracts. Why are you treating my son like a threat? You're supposed to trust each other." When I told her I was protecting what I'd built before Evan ever existed in my world, she acted like I'd insulted her entire family. It was 3 weeks of cold silences, late-night arguments, and his family circling around us like vultures. "If you loved me," Evan said one night, voice cracking, "you wouldn't need this." I looked him straight in the eyes. "If you loved me, you wouldn't try to take what's mine." He signed eventually, but I never forgot the resentment in his expression as he held that pen. And he never forgave the fact that I didn't back down. For a while, life felt normal enough. We fell into routines. He worked in sales for a medical supply company. I worked long hours at the shop. We had dinner most nights, usually something simple I cooked because Evan wasn't great in the kitchen. On weekends, we'd take drives to the lake, go hiking, see movies. Small, ordinary moments that made me believe maybe we were building something real. But there were other moments too. Moments when he'd glance around my house, with this strange expression, as if he were measuring his place in it. Moments when he'd make comments like, "Must be nice, owning everything," or "I wish my job paid like yours," or "It's weird being the one who makes less." He said them with a laugh, but the bitterness seeped through eventually. His spending habits didn't help. Designer sneakers, new watches, overpriced cologne. At first, I thought he was just treating himself. Then the credit card bills started arriving with numbers that didn't match his paycheck. He asked me once to cover his minimum payment just this month. I did it. Once. He took that as an invitation to ask again. I told him no. That became another crack. Then the shift happened. It was subtle, too subtle for anyone but the person he lived with to notice. Evan started dressing differently for work. He spent more time styling his hair. He bought clothes I'd never seen before. He'd leave earlier, come back later. His phone was suddenly glued to him or face down on tables. He told me he was busy, or stressed, or taking on some new projects. But his explanations were too smooth, too quick, too polished. The biggest sign came one Thursday when he said he had a surprise work trip for continuing training. I remember staring at him across the kitchen as he packed, something cold settling in my chest. "Since when does your company do overnight trainings?" I asked. He paused. Just long enough for me to see something flicker across his face. "Since now, I guess," he said, forcing a laugh. He was lying, badly, and not even caring enough to hide it well. That night, I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, staring at his empty side of the bed, and I finally let myself accept the truth. Evan wasn't just pulling away, he was disappearing into someone else's life. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't even confront him. Instead, a strange calm came over me, a calm that felt like clarity sharpening into something dangerous. If Evan wanted to lie in the shadows, fine. I'd drag him into the light. He just didn't know yet that the story he thought he was writing was already in my hands, and I was about to turn every page against him. The night Evan came home from his training trip, he smelled like hotel soap. Not ours, not the one I kept stocked in the bathroom cabinet. A different brand entirely, sharp, citrusy, unfamiliar. He tossed his bag into the corner, kissed me on the cheek like he was checking a box, and said, "Missed you." But his eyes didn't hold mine for even a second. It was in that moment, long before I had any hard evidence, that I knew. The kind of knowing that settles into your bones before your brain catches up. A low, heavy instinct whispering, "He's not yours anymore." Still, instinct wasn't enough. I needed proof. I needed precision. And more than anything, I needed patience. The first real clue arrived uninvited. It came through our shared phone plan, which I handled because Evan always forgot the password. I checked the usage log, not because I was snooping, at least that's what I told myself, but because I'd paid the bill and noticed a spike in text volume. There it was. A number I didn't recognize, hundreds of messages, daytime, nighttime, after midnight. A pattern, an emotional pulse. No name saved, just a number. My throat felt tight as I wrote it down. The next weekend, Evan claimed he had an early start and left the house at 6 o'clock a.m. He wasn't expecting me to check the car's navigation history, but I did. And suddenly everything clicked. 3 addresses kept repeating. A condo complex across town. A restaurant Evan had never once taken me to. A boutique hotel near the airport. The last one made my fingers go cold. His training trip had been at that hotel. Yet his company had no branches near the airport, no conferences, no training centers. He'd lied cleanly, effortlessly, probably repeatedly. I didn't cry, didn't confront, didn't fall apart. I just stared at the screen and whispered one sentence that changed the direction of my life. "You picked the wrong woman to underestimate." The next part of the plan came naturally, like my brain had already rehearsed it for years, waiting for the right betrayal to activate it. Confronting him would have given him too much control. He would have flipped it back onto me. Accusations, tears, promises, excuses. He would have rewritten the narrative until I doubted my own clarity. So instead, I made a decision. If Evan wanted to live a double life, I would give him a mirror to drown in. I would create the illusion of an affair, not because I wanted revenge, not at first, but because I knew the moment Evan believed I was cheating, he would reveal who he really was. He would panic. He would slip. He would file for divorce, thinking he could take half the life I built. And that would be my opening. I bought the burner phone on a Tuesday. Paid cash. No loyalty card. No ID. Just a cheap plastic rectangle with a new number and a blank slate. I sat at my workbench in the shop that night, wiping grease from my fingers as I sent the first message to my real phone. "Had fun today. Can't wait to see you again." Simple, vague, tempting. I read it back and felt a cold thrill in my chest. Not triumph, something sharper. The next message, "Thinking about you." Then, "Tonight was amazing." I didn't go overboard, just enough to make a pattern, enough to make it believable. Then I angled my phone screen just right on the kitchen counter. Open, visible, but not suspiciously so. I didn't have to wait long. Evan walked by, headed to the fridge, and I watched his eyes flick sideways. He saw the message. I saw the twitch in his jaw. He didn't say a word. But something shifted inside him. Good. Let the guilt under his skin begin to itch. I escalated gradually. Slow enough to be subtle, sharp enough to wound. I stayed late at the shop more often, not pretending, just working, but letting him believe I was somewhere else. I bought new clothes, not flashy, just fitted enough that he'd notice. I got a better haircut, not dramatic, just enough to make him wonder who I was trying to impress. I left the dinner table once to take a call and stood in the garage talking to no one. I returned to find him staring at his plate, fork frozen midair. "Who was that?" he asked. "Just someone from work," I replied casually. The look he gave me, it wasn't concern, it wasn't jealousy. It was recognition, the kind a cheater has when they think they've spotted another one. The first sign he was rattled came 2 weeks later. He started doing the dishes, then making my coffee, then leaving sticky notes like, "Hope you have a great day." Little bursts of sweetness coming from a man who hadn't lifted a finger in months. The guilt was devouring him, and he didn't even know why. Perfect. Let him try to outact me. Let him sweat. Meanwhile, I kept gathering evidence. Screenshots of his call logs, printouts of the text records, photos of navigation history, time-stamped receipts. I found restaurant charges for dinners for two, hotel stays he'd lied about, purchases from a boutique lingerie store, definitely not my size. And then I traced the number. Not professionally, just persistently. It belonged to Sabrina Miller, a name I recognized. His ex-girlfriend, the one he claimed was nothing serious years before he met me. The one he said he was totally over. The one who was, according to everything on social media, married. Married. My stomach twisted, but not from heartbreak, from rage. He wasn't just betraying me. He was betraying another woman too, one who probably had no idea. He was tangled in someone else's marriage, and he was stupid enough to leave clues everywhere. I saved everything. 3 nights later, as I pretended to scroll on my phone, Evan sat down beside me, fake casualness dripping off him like cheap cologne. "Work late again tomorrow?" he asked. "Maybe," I answered with a shrug. "Depends." "Depends on what?" I smiled softly. "Depends on who needs me." It was a lie with teeth. He swallowed hard. "Good. Let it hurt. Let him feel the beginnings of the trap he didn't know he was walking into. Because now the stage was set. He believed I was cheating. He thought he held the moral high ground. And soon, very soon, he would make the move I needed him to make. He would file for divorce. And when he did, I would answer with every piece of truth he thought I'd never find. The rope he braided was waiting. All I had to do was let him tug on it. Evan filed on a Tuesday. Not a dramatic day, not an anniversary, not a fight. Just a regular, boring Tuesday morning. The kind where the world is half asleep and nothing feels special. I was under a Kenworth truck in Bay 2 when I heard the footsteps. Quick, hesitant, unfamiliar. Then a voice. "Are you Vicky Romeo?" I slid out on the creeper, wiping grease off my hands. The man in front of me held a white envelope like it was radioactive. "Yes," I said. He exhaled in relief, handed me the papers, and stepped back. "You've been served." He barely finished the sentence before he turned and briskly left the shop. My mechanics froze mid-work. One of them, Jaron, murmured, "Damn, boss, you okay?" I didn't answer. Not yet. I walked into my office, shut the door, sat down, and opened the envelope with steady fingers. It was almost funny how predictable Evan had become. There it was, his petition for divorce. Filed for irreconcilable differences, the safe legal phrase people use when they're pretending to be civilized. But the attached declarations, those told the real story he believed he was writing. He claimed I'd been cheating. He claimed I'd become secretive and emotionally distant. He claimed I was neglecting the marriage for another relationship. He claimed he feared for his financial future because of my dishonesty. I laughed, out loud. A single sharp sound I didn't recognize as mine. Then I saw the line, his real motive. Petitioner requests 50% of all marital assets and spousal support. There it was, the truth beneath all the lies. Evan didn't want out. He wanted in. Into my house, my business, my future, my bank accounts. He wanted to split what he never helped build. He wanted to walk away with half the life he resented me for having. He thought he had leverage. He thought he had evidence. He thought my fake affair, those burner phone messages, gave him the upper hand. Oh, Evan. He had no idea how far ahead I already was. I forwarded the documents to my lawyer, Morgan Hale, a calm, sharp woman who looked like she could slice through lies with a raised eyebrow. She called within an hour. "You were right," she said. "He filed exactly the way you predicted." "Of course he did," I replied. "He's not creative." She chuckled. "Bring everything to my office this afternoon." "Everything as in?" "Everything you've collected. Every receipt, every screenshot, every timestamp photo, every breadcrumb he left behind." My folder was thick. Too thick for a normal person. Perfect for a man like Evan. When I arrived at Morgan's office, I placed the folder on her desk. She raised her brows. "Jesus, Vicky," she whispered. "This is a murder weapon disguised as paperwork." I sat down. He left the trail. I just followed it. She opened the folder, scanning the first few pages. Evan's call logs with the same unknown number. Hundreds of calls. Text records with timestamps matching his work trips. Restaurant charges for two at places he'd never taken me. Hotel receipts. GPS history leading to the same condo again and again. Photos of him entering a hotel with Sabrina, captured by a security camera I pulled from my own shop's supplier. Morgan paused. "Wait, Sabrina Miller? This is the woman he's seeing?" "His ex," I replied coldly. "She's married." Morgan leaned back. "Oh, Vicky, this isn't divorce paperwork. This is a demolition." She tapped a legal pad. I'll prepare the response. When Evan reads it, he's going to panic. Good, I said. The first court hearing arrived faster than I expected. Evan walked into the courtroom wearing his best suit, chin lifted like he was the victim, the wounded husband, the man betrayed by an unfaithful wife. His lawyer, a stiff man with a premature comb-over, sat beside him. They both kept glancing at me. Evan's look wasn't anger, not pride, it was smug. He really thought he'd win. The judge, an older woman with steel-gray hair and the patience of a saint, entered. Everyone rose. Everyone sat. The case began. Evan's lawyer started with forced sincerity. Your Honor, my client has been deeply hurt. Mrs. Romeo has engaged in suspicious behavior, late nights, secretive calls, mysterious messages. He made it sound like a tragedy, like Evan was a saint. Morgan waited until he finished. Then she stood. Your Honor, she said calmly, we have no interest in debating suspicion. We'd like to present evidence. Real evidence. She handed the judge a binder. Not a folder, a binder. Thick, indexed, color-coded, a weapon. The judge flipped to the first page. Her eyes widened. Morgan continued. These are phone records showing Mr. Weston's communication with his affair partner, Mrs. Sabrina Miller, who is notably married. These are time-stamped screenshots of text messages between them. These are credit card statements for hotel stays on dates he claimed to be at work. These are navigation logs from Mr. Weston's vehicle, all pointing to Mrs. Miller's residence. These are restaurant receipts for dinners for two. And this, Morgan placed one last printout before the judge, is security footage of Mr. Weston entering the Henderson Airport Hotel with Mrs. Miller at 9:47 p.m. on the night he told my client he was attending a corporate training. Silence. Absolute crushing silence. Then the judge slowly turned to Evan. Mr. Weston, she said, voice edged like a blade, do you have any evidence supporting your claim that your wife was unfaithful? Evan's face drained of color. His mouth opened. No sound came out. His lawyer cleared his throat, sweating. Your Honor, we believe she deleted. The judge raised a hand. Do you have evidence? His lawyer lowered his head. No, Your Honor. The judge's tone hardened. Then the court recognizes that Mr. Weston filed for divorce under false pretenses based on unfounded allegations while he was engaged in a long-term affair. Evan's hands shook. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at anyone. He looked like a man who dug his own grave and suddenly noticed the shovel. Then came the best part. Asset division. Morgan stood again. Your Honor, we draw attention to the prenuptial agreement Mr. Weston signed. It clearly states that all premarital assets, including Ms. Romeo's home, business, and properties, remain separate. Evan's lawyer scrambled. Your Honor, my client felt pressured. The judge cut him off. This document is notarized. It is clear. It is enforceable. Mr. Weston has no claim to Ms. Romeo's premarital estate. Evan's entire future evaporated in a single sentence. I watched him crumble quietly, beautifully, inevitably. He had filed thinking he'd walk away rich. He would walk away with nothing but the consequences of his own decisions. The judge scheduled final proceedings. Court adjourned. Everyone rose. Evan still wouldn't look at me. He didn't need to. He knew. He had braided the rope. He had tightened the noose. And I had simply let him pull. Evan didn't speak to me for 3 days after the hearing. Not a word, not a text, not a pathetic voicemail filled with half-truths. Just silence. Thick, heavy, embarrassed silence. He moved out of the house the same week. Not with dignity, not with composure, but in a frantic, stumbling rush, like a man afraid to remain in the same space where his lies had died so publicly. The night he packed, he couldn't even look at me. He rushed through the bedroom like a thief who realized halfway through the break-in that the homeowner was standing behind them with a shotgun. He grabbed clothes, chargers, a half-broken duffel bag, shoes he'd once bragged about, cologne he only wore for her. His keys clattered against the counter when he dropped them. It was a sound I'll never forget, a tiny metal admission of defeat. He cleared his throat once, tried to speak, failed. Then he walked out. I didn't follow him, didn't stop him, didn't ask a single question. The truth had already answered everything. News spreads fast in a town like ours, especially scandal, especially their scandal. Within a week, Sabrina's husband found out everything. The phone records, the hotel receipts, the photos. My lawyer had sent their lawyer copies as a professional courtesy. Apparently, Sabrina's husband didn't take it well. He kicked her out of their house, filed his own petition for divorce, served her papers at her office. She'd been highly respected there, supervising several departments. But after her affair became public knowledge, Her co-workers treated her like she carried a disease. One of my friends who worked in the same building told me, she walked around like her skin didn't fit anymore. People avoided her in the break room. She looked haunted. Good. She should have felt something. She should have felt anything. Meanwhile, Evan, his workplace was disrupted too. Medical supply sales rely heavily on reputation, trust, professional relationships. Clients don't trust men who can't even manage their own marriages. Coworkers don't respect men who bring lawsuits and scandals into the office environment. This wasn't karma. This wasn't revenge. This was simply consequence. One evening, weeks after court, Evan's sister sent me a message. A long one. A self-righteous one. She wrote, I heard what happened. If you had communicated better, Evan wouldn't have felt so insecure. You pushed him away. You humiliated him. You could have kept your marriage if you weren't so obsessed with money. I stared at the message a moment. Then I replied, no one forced your brother to cheat. Not on me. Not on another woman's marriage. Not at those hotels he lied about. His insecurity isn't my responsibility. His choices aren't my burden. She never wrote again. I blocked her anyway, because one rule became crystal clear to me. People who excuse betrayal are dangerous. People who blame the betrayed are worse. The final court date arrived. Evan looked different, smaller, dimmer, like someone had deflated him from the inside out. The judge finalized everything quickly. My home remained mine. My shop remained mine. The rental properties remained mine. Our joint account, barely $4,000, would be split down the middle. He kept his own car. He kept his 401k. No spousal support. He tried one last plea. Your Honor, I gave this marriage everything I... The judge held up her hand. No, you gave this marriage the bare minimum while taking from your wife and committing adultery. You are the architect of your own misfortune. He collapsed into his chair. She wasn't cruel, she was factual. Evan had expected to walk away rich. Instead, he walked away with exactly what he'd brought into the relationship, which was almost nothing. His downfall continued in slow motion. He moved into a small apartment he could barely afford. His company reassigned him to a lower-earning division to rebuild trust. Sabrina, after being abandoned by everyone she had deceived, stopped replying to his messages entirely. He'd lost his marriage, his lover, his respect, his money, and his reputation, all in less than 4 months. And I didn't lift a finger to destroy him. He did it. I just stepped out of the way. Meanwhile, my life quietly began knitting itself back together. The mornings felt lighter, the house felt bigger, the business felt brighter. I repainted the bedroom, replaced the mattress, removed every trace of him, every shirt, every photo, every stupid cologne bottle he never wore for me. I took my German Shepherd puppy, Diesel, out for longer walks. Let him sleep at the foot of my bed instead of in the crate Evan insisted on. I turned Evan's old office into a workshop for my own projects. Hung shelves, organized tools, filled the walls with plans and sketches and possibility. And the silence of my home, it wasn't empty, it was peaceful. But the world has a way of testing your peace, and it came in the form of a text message, late at night, from a number I had blocked months before. I hadn't even realized he made a new number. It read, You ruined me. You didn't have to do all of this. You made me think you were cheating. You manipulated me. We could have fixed things if you weren't so cold. I loved you. You're cruel. I stared at the message without emotion. Not anger, not sadness, just truth. He had loved the version of me who made his life easy, who carried more than my share, who forgave quietly and endured silently. He had never loved the woman who stood up for herself. He had never loved the woman who refused to be stolen from. I typed nothing. Instead, I blocked the new number too, then placed the phone face down on the table. Because I had nothing left to say, he had already heard the truth. In court, in consequences, in silence. And now, he could live with the life he chose. The one he built brick by brick out of lies. The one that collapsed in on him because he never thought the foundation would matter. He was wrong. It mattered to me. And that's why I'm finally free. The funny thing about silence is how loud it becomes once the chaos finally stops. For weeks after the divorce was finalized, I would wake up expecting tension, like a leftover reflex, expecting the sharp inhale before a fight, expecting the coldness in the kitchen air that always settled between Evan and me before we pretended everything was normal. But the silence now? It wasn't dread. It was peace. I could walk barefoot across my hardwood floors in the morning sun, coffee in hand, Diesel trotting behind me, and feel something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. Not because Evan was dangerous. He wasn't. But because he had been unpredictable in ways that damaged your spirit quietly, slowly, silently. I didn't realize how exhausting it had been until it stopped. I had plans for my life again. Real ones. I expanded the shop's services, hired another mechanic, Lena, who had sharper instincts than most men I'd met in the field. Signed 2 new fleet contracts with trucking companies that had been trying to work with me for a while. Every time I walked through the shop now, I felt lighter, as if the space itself was breathing easier. Without Evan's weight in my home, everything else in my world rose a little higher. My house became mine again. I repainted the office walls a dusty slate blue, then ripped out the old carpet and replaced it with warm, golden wood. I moved my drafting table into the sunlight, hung framed photos of engines, classic trucks, and landscapes I'd never had the courage to display. It was strange looking around and realizing how much space he'd occupied without actually contributing anything real. And now, every corner felt reclaimed. In the evenings, Diesel and I walked the neighborhood. He was already 60 pounds of muscle and loyalty, ears perked toward every sound, protective in a way Evan never was. One night, as I watched Diesel sniff at a patch of lavender growing along the sidewalk, I felt something shift inside me, a deep, quiet realization I hadn't allowed myself to acknowledge before. I hadn't just survived Evan. I had outgrown him. The woman I had become, the woman willing to protect herself, willing to stand her ground, willing to face betrayal with strategy rather than sorrow, that woman didn't need someone like Evan. She required more, and she deserved it. It was about 3 months after the divorce when the final loose end snapped shut. A friend of mine, Jamie, texted me that she'd run into Sabrina at a grocery store. Apparently, Sabrina looked shattered. Her divorce had gone through too. She lost her house. Her job demoted her due to professional misconduct. Most of her friends, not wanting to be associated with the affair, stopped returning calls. And Evan? He wasn't with her. He never had been. Not after the fallout. The forbidden thrill collapsed. Reality returned. And they both realized their affair wasn't love. It was boredom. It was validation. It was selfishness disguised as passion. When those things evaporated, nothing was left. I felt no satisfaction hearing it. Just clarity. Some people don't destroy your life. They reveal the parts of your life you were always meant to let go of. As for Evan, whispers about his situation trickled in from people who still knew someone who knew someone. He'd bounced between 2 apartments. His job had placed him on a performance improvement plan. He'd lost several major accounts because clients didn't want to deal with the drama. And the man who once criticized me for being too guarded with my money had drained most of his savings trying to survive without the lifestyle I had afforded him. Actions have echoes. His were loud. One quiet Sunday, I sat on my back patio, Diesel curled at my feet, warm tea in my hands. The sky was tinted gold. Peace was gentle, restorative, earned. That's when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I didn't check it immediately. I let the moment stay soft. But eventually, curiosity nudged me. I unlocked the screen. A message glowed back at me. I know you hate me, but I loved you, Vicky. I wish I had understood you better. I wish we had fixed things. I'm not doing well. Can we talk? The words weren't surprising. Desperate people always reach for the last door they slam shut. What struck me wasn't the message itself. It was my reaction. Nothing. No anger, no ache, no longing, no need for closure. Just nothing. I had outgrown the version of myself who once loved him. The version who had tolerated disrespect in the name of compromise. The version who assumed betrayal was something to endure, not confront. I typed, "No, take care of yourself." Then I blocked the number. Not out of cruelty, not out of bitterness, out of finality. Some chapters aren't meant to be reopened. Some lessons aren't meant to be softened. And some people aren't meant to follow you into the life you build after them. I'm not naive. I'm not untouched by what happened, but I'm stronger because of it. And now, I sleep without secrets. I work without distraction. I breathe without doubt. My home feels like home. My shop feels like mine. And my future? It feels open again, wide, quiet, and waiting. Evan taught me one